Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, we have a big show for all of you. We're going to delve into some NFL news. A lot of stuff has been going on around the world of football, including Brandon Aiyuk. Who else but him in this offseason? He has been the main character of the offseason. More news surrounding him as the drama continues to build of whether or not he will be on the 49ers as if the season begins. We'll also take a brief look around Olympic basketball as the quarterfinals are wrapping up. The U.S. is putting on the finishing touches of a blowout over Brazil currently. The rest of the quarterfinals are done. We'll take a look at the semifinal matchups and the quarterfinal matchups as well before taking a look at some depth chart stuff that came out. A bunch of teams dropped some unofficial early depth charts in the NFL today. Talk about some surprises with some rookie quarterbacks, some running backs, and much more before continuing our series today, taking a look at the Jets for the preseason preview and also taking a look at their offseason and giving them a grade. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Brandon Aiyuk saga. We have done a lot of coverage on Brandon Aiyuk this offseason. As I said, he kind of has been the main character of this offseason. The 49ers receiver has been in and out of headlines revolving his trade. It seemed as of even about a week ago, he wasn't going to get traded. He was going to play out the season with the 49ers, and then he was going to move on to bigger and better things, go and try and be a wide receiver one elsewhere, try and stick out from this current backlog of talent that the 49ers have in the skill position area, including wide receiver. The 49ers seem prepared for this. They went out and they drafted their replacement. They gave contract extensions to guys that could replace him. And then it seemed like everything was blowing over. It never felt like Brandon Aiyuk was going to get a contract from the 49ers. It doesn't make sense for the 49ers to give him a contract. There's a lot of money for them to tie up when they need to start saving money so they can pay guys like Brock Purdy coming up in the future. Maybe even next year is when he might get his payday. But Brandon Aiyuk has officially been back on the market, right? There have been reports as of yesterday that there was a false report that a trade was accepted for Brandon Aiyuk, but that was refuted. But the rumors are back, and all of a sudden, it seems like it's all but he's all but traded at this point. Reports are from multiple outlets, CBS, NBC, that in principle the 49ers have agreed to send two trade packages from both the Patriots and the Browns. Now, that doesn't mean that it's done because Brandon Aiyuk is working out contracts with them. He's been giving permission to work out a contract with those teams, and he's basically going to choose in the end where he goes. Other teams in the mix, reports are the Steelers, who were in it originally, backed out, are back in discussions now. Talks had stalled. They are back in it. So there's a 3-team race. It was originally a 4-team race with the Washington Commanders, who were favored to go and get him because of the whole situation with, Jaden Daniels, that phone call that they had, the FaceTime video that Brandon Aiyuk posted. It turns out the Commanders were never going to make that trade. From what it seems like, and this is not confirmed, this is just some rumors that have been put out there, the kind of package that the 49ers are looking to get back, regardless of what you also have to pay Brandon Aiyuk on top of what you're going to give him, includes a top wide receiver to replace him. The Browns rumors are sending over, Amari Cooper, who they just reworked a contract for. He's up at the top of the list, making $20 million. That's still less than Brandon Aiyuk is probably asking for. The Browns reportedly have him in the offer. The Patriots have Kendrick Bourne in the offer, so it's not like the same level. But I think Kendrick Bourne fits better with the Niners. He was a former Niner, and he has that same kind of mentality that all these Niners receivers have to go out and block and be a team player. Not really the same thing that Amari Cooper has. While Amari Cooper is better than Kendrick Bourne, I don't think many people are disputing that fact. I don't think Amari Cooper being the guy to replace Brandon Aiyuk is going to work as smoothly as bringing in a guy like Kendrick Bourne. Now, Amari Cooper, and that's simply because he doesn't have the same level of blocking. That's not to say that he wouldn't do it. It's not to say that he would refuse to buy into the system. Obviously, on the 49ers, you have to buy in or you're not really going to get that playing time. But it's an interesting kind of philosophy shift there between Brandon Aiyuk, who's one of the better blocking receivers in the league, not afraid to get his hands dirty, get in there, throw a couple shoulders, and Amari Cooper, who seems like the exact opposite to me. Now, if I am Brandon Aiyuk and I get to choose, because in all reality, he does get to choose. If I'm looking at these teams, assuming that and we don't know what the package going back is. If he goes to the Browns and Amari Cooper stays with the Browns, wow, that would make the most sense for the Browns and for Brandon Aiyuk as far as winning. I feel like where Brandon Aiyuk wants to go, and is a place that he can be that number one receiver. And if Brandon Aiyuk goes and joins a wide receiver room with Amari Cooper, he's not going to be that clear cut wide receiver one. For that reason, I don't know if the Browns are the number one option. Now, that does all change if Amari Cooper is a part of that trade package, which if I'm the Browns, I have a hard time parting ways with Amari Cooper for Brandon Aiyuk. And I know Brandon Aiyuk is younger. He does a lot of things great, and that he does a lot of things that Amari Cooper doesn't do, but Amari Cooper does a lot of things that Brandon Aiyuk doesn't do. And maybe I'm lower on Brandon Aiyuk than a lot of these other people are, than a lot of these other teams are. But Brandon Aiyuk, when I look at him, he doesn't scream to me, elite number one receiver. And to a certain extent, neither does Amari Cooper, but I'm still taking Amari Cooper over Brandon Aiyuk. His ability to be a true wide receiver one has been proven. As far as Brandon Aiyuk, I don't know what he's going to do when he has to go up against the number one cover corner and go up against double teams, because he's going to be that guy that gets that attention if he goes to a place like New England. And I think that's what he wants. I think he wants to prove it. And I think he has all the skills. He's a great route runner. He's got great hands. His concentration on the ball is insane. Some of the best in the league. And I've already talked about what he does for your team in the run game, and I think that's great. But as far as him being a guy that's worth $30 million, we went over that list, I believe yesterday. Actually, we went over the list of receivers making over $30 million after Tyreek Hill signed his deal. He doesn't fit into that list for me. You put him around that $20 million mark, I'm fine with that. That's not what he is going to be looking for. He's looking for something more along the lines of that $30 million, of that Justin Jefferson money, which no team is going to pay him Justin Jefferson money. But if someone pays him like Amon-Ra St. Brown money, maybe that's fine. Just right around that 30 million, 28 to $30 million mark, I feel like is fine. It's an overpay for him, but that's what it's going to come down to. Who gives him the money, and if the money's the same, who he would rather go to. Now, if we're taking money out of this and just looking at best fits, we're going to throw all three teams in there, not just the two front runners, the Steelers as well. So three teams: the Browns, the Steelers, and the Patriots. I think the best fit for him is probably the Steelers. He goes into a system that, while the quarterback play isn't the greatest, none of those three teams have the greatest quarterback play, right? You can maybe say on paper the Browns have the best, but Deshaun Watson hasn't been the same, and there's no signs showing that he ever will be good again. Honestly, I don't believe in him, and maybe that's because he's a bad person, but that's besides the point in this conversation here. uh, the Steelers have their whole quarterback situation with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields between who's going to be the quarterback there. And there's some promise there. I mean, you talk about Russell Wilson, he still has the arm talent. He just didn't have, he didn't have the offensive line in Denver, and everything just kind of went down in Denver. Not I think a change of scenery is really going to help him. Justin Fields has a lot of promise as a passer and a runner in that system as well, although that's going to be a little more run heavy. And then you get to New England, and they have a rookie quarterback in Drake May, who doesn't sound like he's starting off that well in camp. Jacoby Brissett sounds like the guy. He might even be behind Joe Milton, although we'll talk a little bit about that in the depth charts in a couple segments since that came out. But if I'm Brandon Aiyuk, I think the best destination for me is anywhere but the Browns, because that way I know I'm going to be a clear cut number one. It seems like the Niners are looking to get a wide receiver back to replace him, or at least someone that can come on and help them win a Super Bowl, because they were that close to winning a Super Bowl. They've been that close to winning a Super Bowl for multiple seasons in a row. Just falling short every year recently. But this is a team that's looking to compete. They're not looking to get first round draft picks, although I'm sure that would be nice. If I'm Brandon Aiyuk, I think the Patriots are probably the best spot to go. You're going to be that clear cut number one. They're going to be willing to offer you the big money. They don't have a lot of money locked up anywhere else. The Steelers, you're going to have to compete with George Pickens, who I love George Pickens. His ability to track the ball, make contested catches is second to none in the league nowadays. And again, with the Browns, Amari Cooper is there. And this is all assuming that these top receivers don't get moved in the deal, which it sounds like they might, which I think those teams would be insane to move them for Brandon Aiyuk. But if they do that, then it's a better fit in Pittsburgh. But I do like the idea of him taking over and making that connection with a rookie quarterback, being that guy that the rookie quarterback can rely on, that Drake May can rely on in New England. And I think that's the best spot for him. Let me know what you think is going to happen. I still am not sold on Brandon Aiyuk even moving, but it sounds like momentum is going that way. Let me know what you think of Brandon Aiyuk, everything that's been going on this entire offseason. I thought we were done with his saga, to be completely honest with you. But in our next segment, we're going to take a quick break, come on back and talk about Olympic basketball. The quarterfinals are all but over. The U.S. is putting a finishing touch on the blowout of the Brazil team to advance to the semis, take on Serbia and Nikola Jokic. We'll talk about all of the quarterfinal games that took place, as well as previewing the semifinal games a little bit. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking all about the Brandon Aiyuk updates. He is most likely on the move soon. In principle, deals are done with both the Browns and the Patriots. It's just up to him and his agent and those teams to see if they can get a contract worth out. Although dark horse, the Steelers reportedly are still in that conversation for Brandon Aiyuk. So we'll see what happens there. In this segment, we're going to take a quick break from football, talk a little bit about Olympic basketball. The quarterfinals just wrapped up as we went into break. The U.S. finished up a blowout of the Brazilian team. We'll talk about that as well as the other three quarterfinal matchups in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw it in the comments, throw it in the chat. We'll get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying in this segment, we're going to get into Olympic basketball a little bit. The Olympic basketball quarterfinals have wrapped up officially. Like I said, the U.S. dismantling Brazil. They went on. Brazil looked like they were going to make it close for a second there. They went on a 10-0 run in the second quarter before the U.S. finished them off with a 15-0 run heading into halftime. They end up winning that game 122 to 87. That's the most points scored this entire Olympics. They shot an insane clip, over 60% from the field, although that game never really was going to be that close. There's a couple games that I wanted to focus on, and I'll start off here with the Serbia-Australia game, because that probably was the best game so far of this entire Olympic bracket. Serbia and Australia went into overtime. Serbia takes the W 95-90 after Jokic goes off, sparks a 24-point comeback, a massive comeback. In Olympic basketball, it's been a very different game, right? Jokic is still out there doing what he needs to do. I was really impressed by the Serbian defense, especially down the stretch. That's not to say anything against Australia. While their two big stars, Patty Mills and Josh Giddey, went off, especially Patty Mills in that first half. I believe he had over 20 points in that first half. It was insane. They both shot just about 50% from the field, 60 to 40% from three. And it still wasn't enough. Jokic is just that special. If you're looking at the box scores of these games, if you're just looking at the box scores, especially of that Serbia game, there's no one that really sticks out too much. You obviously have Jokic, right? Jokic is always going to do his thing, and he is the best player in the world. He absolutely is continuing to prove that, putting up 21 points on a pretty solid efficiency, 9 for 17. He was 0 for 3 from 3, but he almost puts up a triple-double in the Olympics, just 2 assists away, which is something that is a lot harder to do in FIBA and the Olympic basketball than is in the NBA. But Jokic goes off. I mean, the next highest scorer is Bogdanovic. He didn't show up his 28 like he did in his last game, but 17 on really not great shooting. They're still able to come back from a 24-point hole and win this game. The two leaders in the Australian clubhouse, of course, Olympic Patty Mills obviously always does his thing. It's Olympic Patty Mills, 11 for 21, 2 of 5 from 3, finishes with 26 points, and Josh Giddey also playing a great game, which is something that I wasn't expecting this Olympics, but he's going off here. 11 for 20, 3 for 5 from 3, and 25 points, along with 5 rebounds and 4 assists. They were both doing their best to stay in this game. Unfortunately, Jokic and the defense, especially the defense from the Serbian national team, was just too much for Australia to handle, and Serbia is taking on the U.S. a rematch. The third time these two teams will play. Obviously the first time was scrimmage, second time was in their group. This is the third time they'll meet up. This is in the semifinals, and we'll preview that game in a second. But on the other side of the bracket, Germany takes on Greece. Germany was the other top seed next to the US. They also went 3-0 in group play. They take down Giannis, who has been the best player in this Olympics, averaging 27 and 7, heading into this game. He's been phenomenal, basically willing Greece out of the group stage. Unfortunately, he is not enough. Again, Dennis Schroeder does his thing. He wasn't lighting up the box score. No one scored more than 20 points, but you had a lot of great contributions from a lot of these guys. Pretty solid shooting from Dennis Schroeder coming off the bench, still having 31 minutes played, 13 points off of the bench, as well to go with 8 assists. But they just shut down Greece. Greece is a team that is basically just Giannis. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It got them this far into the Olympics. This is, I believe, the furthest that they've made it in the Olympics in my entire lifetime. This is great basketball success for Greece, and I think that's one of the things that needs to be mentioned here. I mean, outside of poor 3-point shooting, which I think most teams outside of the U.S. have struggled with in the quarterfinals, and we'll get to that especially in the France Canada game, which was the most anticipated quarterfinals matchup for good reason. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's one of those things that is completely different. It's a very similar game to the NBA, but it's a lot slower. You're obviously not seeing these as high scoring. As these games aren't as high scoring, obviously. And getting to the biggest, most exciting matchup of the quarterfinals, or at least the one that was hyped up the most. Canada Canada loses to France 73-82. Canada and France are two of the most star-studded rosters in all of this Olympic team. Obviously, excluding the U.S. here, that has a team of monsters over there, right? This is a France and Canada team that, next to Germany, were the two that were in contention to take that medal. Now they're both going to now France is going to take on Germany in yet another high octane matchup that we'll talk about in a second. But the story of this game was the 3-point shooting. This was really where Canada was going to press its advantage, right? France has its tandem of big men down there. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama and Rudy Gobert are the two headliners. They weren't particularly active in this game, scoring-wise. They didn't have their greatest shooting nights. Neither did Canada. The guard play for Canada, led by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, R.J. Barrett, Dylan Brooks to a certain extent. These guys are where they were going to press their advantage. You're going up against the likes of Cordonier, Nick Batum. These are guys that aren't the greatest as far as guard play goes, and that's been the weakness of France this whole tournament. The interior defense was great, but the exterior defense was where they struggled. Canada shot 23% from 3. 5 for 21, and that was really the downfall. You saw it a lot, especially down the stretch, for both France and Canada. They were both really struggling to hit their deep range shots. Victor Wembanyama was 0 for 6 from 3 on his own, and I think the star of this game was Cordonier. He puts up 20 points on 5 for 4 from 3, 6 of 10 from the field. He's a rising star here. He really was the driving force, keeping France ahead of Canada. That's not to say that the defense and some of the stars weren't doing their thing, but he was the real reason that they were able to push through. Now, Canada was favored in this matchup. This was still a really good game. It just is that no one could make the basketball. It feels like it was almost a double rim out there from how many bricks that both of these teams were putting up. They were loud bricks too. It was some of the loudest sound off the rim that I've heard watching a basketball game in a very, very, very long time. But it is what it is. Heading into the semifinals, not quite for medals yet, but we do have an exciting matchup between Germany and France. France, with their interior defense, is going to be tough for Germany to get in, but if Germany can, they have a lot of shooters on the outside, right? They got a lot of guys that can knock down their threes, and that is where the weaknesses for France. I think Germany is going to take this. It has been pretty much set up for a Germany-US clash in the finals this whole time. But if Germany shoots 20% from three, like Canada did in this last game, there's no reason why France, with their interior, and we've seen how important big men are in this Olympics, with the U.S. especially. Bam Adebayo doing his thing a couple of times, Anthony Davis dominating down low, Joel Embiid has started to get his footing, but it's really been the centers for the U.S. Aside, and also in the shooters, but the U.S. is kind of an outlier there. But the centers have been dominating down low, getting those extra possessions with the rebounds. It's going to be kind of a clash of cultures here, I would say, basketball culture. Obviously, on the other side of things, you have the U.S. taking on Serbia, and we've seen that matchup go a couple of times. They've got Jokic, Serbia does, so you can never really count them out. The U.S. does have that super team. LeBron got elbowed in the face today. He seemed like he was going to be fine, but that's something to monitor there. Although, in all honesty, and not to sound sacrilegious or anything here, I don't think this U.S. team needs LeBron James. This LeBron James has been the leader of this team, and has been the best player on this team, but they don't need him. That's how stacked this team is, and that's kind of crazy for me to say. Uh, but they can survive Serbia without him. They could probably win a gold without him, to be completely honest. Although you could say that about anybody on that team. Just pick one person, they could probably win a gold without them, as long as you're not missing 2, 3, 4 guys at a time. But he should be fine, and this should be a good matchup. Jokic is gonna do his thing. If the defense, especially down the stretch that Serbia was playing with, can show up to that game against the U.S. in the semis, they might cause some issues. Although, again, I don't think you can do much against this U.S. basketball team. I think they're kind of overpowered, to be completely honest with you. But anyway, that's what's going on in the U.S. in the Olympic basketball for the men. We'll take a look at the women tomorrow, as well as some more breakdowns for the rest of the Olympics. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about the depth charts that came out for a lot of NFL teams. There were some surprising moves on there surrounding especially some young rookie quarterbacks. So we'll talk about all of that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube, absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the Olympic basketball quarterfinals, excuse me. And also the semifinals. As the quarterfinals officially wrap up, we have U.S. taking on Serbia and Australia taking on France for the right to play for a gold medal. We also talked about Brandon Aiyuk, where he might end up. There are 3 suitors for him. 2 of them are ahead of the other. The Steelers are working their way back into the conversation. The 49ers reportedly have the framework for deals done with the Browns and the Patriots so far, although Brandon Aiyuk is still working on his contract before the move is made. In this segment here, we're going to talk a little bit more about the NFL. Some depth charts came out today with some surprising news, especially surrounding some rookie quarterbacks. We'll talk about what that means and more in just a second, but before we do, Remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into some chart surprises that happened just the other day. Just, I believe this morning, a bunch of them came out earlier today. And the biggest surprise for me, and we'll start with the rookie quarterbacks. The biggest surprise for me came out of Denver, where Bo Nix, the quarterback drafted 12th overall, rookie quarterback out of Oregon there, is the third string behind Zach Wilson, behind Jared Stidham, who is listed as the starter. That's kind of crazy to me. Now, that's not to say that I'm surprised, but that I expected Bo Nix to be this great quarterback. Bo Nix is a guy that, in all honesty, I don't think should have gotten drafted. That might be too harsh. I don't think he should have got drafted any higher than the 6th round. There's a lot, but quarterback is a premium position. I had my feelings about this quarterback draft, a whole bunch of them as well. But Bo Nix is a guy that did not deserve to go in the first round. He goes 12th overall to the Broncos who desperately needed a quarterback, as well as trading for Zach Wilson. And we know what kind of quarterback Zach Wilson is. It's an interesting quarterback room. They have Jared Stidham, who has proven to be a solid replacement level quarterback as far as becoming a backup. He came in for Denver last year, played solid in relief, I would say, of Russell Wilson. Not lighting the world on fire, but it is a little concerning that the Broncos, who spend a huge asset on a guy at number 12, while they did have a lot of other holes to fill, they just aren't going to play him. And it's not even the fact that he isn't the starter that I'm concerned about. It's a bigger issue is the fact that he is the third string. Now, Zach Wilson is a guy that has talent. You know, we saw it last season. 1 or 2 games randomly, he would just pop off and be a great quarterback. But consistently, he is not that guy. And it's like playing duck duck goose with him, you know, except the ducks are bust games and the goose is his good game, right? You're going to get a lot more busts than you're going to get boom games for him, right? It's not a great situation to have. He's not a great backup to have. The Jets learned that the hard way last season, right? This is an awful quarterback room for Denver, a team that I still believe does have a lot of talent, especially in that wide receiver room. They've gotten unlucky with guys like Tim Patrick going down 2 years in a row. They traded away Jerry Jeudy, but even with him gone, if Tim Patrick can stay healthy and, you know, you get Cortland Sutton back, who he just got some money restructured, I believe, and he should be coming back. That's a pretty solid 1-2 punch there at wide receiver, not to mention the running back with Williams back there. It's a solid skill position room, right? You just need a quarterback to run it. And they have a lot of other issues too. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, Denver is a quarterback away. Their defense was gutted outside of Pat Surtain. They don't have much. Justin Simmons is still a free agent, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of momentum for him re-signing with Denver. Bradley Chubb, they traded away. He was one of the last great pass rushers they have. They don't really have much as far as a defense goes, and that kind of has been the Broncos' identity and how they've won ball games in the last 5-6 football seasons since Peyton Manning left. Even when Peyton Manning was there, that was kind of how they won football games. But this is a shocker to me, to be completely honest with you. Some other surprises that came out. Maybe this one isn't as big of a surprise, but it is a rookie quarterback. JJ McCarthy, the other guy that I was lower on as far as rookie quarterbacks go that went in the first round. he is the backup, and that kind of was expected. He's the number 2 string. At least he isn't the 3rd string behind Nick Mullins, and if he was, that would be a lot more concerning for me. He'll get some snaps in the preseason as well as Bo Nix, so we'll see what he can do there. But it's not looking good for some of these rookies. We talked a little bit about Drake May. Drake May, all reports are that he is not ready yet coming out of camp. Jacoby Brissett might be the start is supposedly the starter for now, as well as, Joe Milton making some impressions over there at camp. Maybe he steals a backup role. Would be kind of crazy if that happened. He does have a rocket of an arm, Joe Milton does. But as far as some other news, the Titans running back room, they bring in Tony Pollard. They have Tyjae Spears. They haven't announced an RB1. Those two are both listed as RB1 right now. It's going to be interesting to see who gets the bigger carry load. Obviously Tony Pollard is the guy that they bring in, but Tyjae Spears is the guy that they chose over Derrick Henry. This all of this has its fantasy implications more than really real life implications. Other running back news, same thing. Jahmyr Gibbs is still listed as the RB2 behind David Montgomery, which it seemed to work out just fine last year. But I feel like at some point you got to start giving, Jahmyr Gibbs his RB1 status, if not this season, maybe next year. Although Montgomery did play great last season. But there's more unofficial depth charts are starting to come out, and we'll get a better read on what this NFL season is going to look like. We're just a month away, 30 days, I believe, until NFL football kicks off. I cannot wait for it. Very excited. In our next segment, we're going to continue our series, taking a look at every single NFL team. Today, taking a look at the New York Jets. The New York Jets get Aaron Rodgers back. We'll talk about their offseason, then take a break and talk about their schedule, give them a record, give them an offseason grade. So stick around for that. We'll be right back for that and more right here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just went over some rookie quarterbacks and some running backs that were not where we expected them to be on the depth chart, the unofficial depth charts that came out. Football is just a month away, and in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the New York Jets. We've been doing a series going over every single NFL team. We finished up the NFC last week. We are working our way through the AFC East. We did the Dolphins yesterday. We did the Bills on Friday, actually. We're almost done with the AFC East. We've got 3 divisions to go in 3 weeks until football. So we are right on pace to get all of this done. Very, very excited. But we're taking a look at the Jets today. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for tuning in and sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, in this segment, we are going to take a look at the New York Jets. The New York Jets offseason to start off with. We're going to give them a grade. And obviously, this is a New York Jets team that disappointed last season. They went 7-10 for the second year in a row, but it's hard to blame them. This is a team that went all in on new quarterback, 4-time MVP, 1-time Super Bowl MVP, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers and that vaunted Jets defense, which is the reason they won 10. They won 7 games. Only that they only lost 10 games, I should say. Aaron Rodgers is back, coming off an Achilles tear, and that makes it hard to judge this Jets team. This is a Jets team that, like I said, is really hard to judge from this last offseason. It's something that, they have all the talent offensively. They have Garrett Wilson, one of the best at his position. They have Breece Hall, one of the best at his position. But what they really went and did this offseason was fix their biggest issue, their biggest glaring weakness from last season, the offensive line. The offensive line has been a huge issue for the Jets. Obviously, not all their fault, but Aaron Rodgers gets hurt on the 4th play from scrimmage. It definitely does not help that the offensive line was not good. That's not to mention the incredible amount of offensive line injuries they went through last season. It was one of the worst offensive lines in the entire league. They go out and they try and fix that. They sign Tyron Smith. They go out and trade for Morgan Moses from the Ravens, rebuilding those 2 tackles. Those are 2 pillars, guys, that if they're healthy, again, that is a big if, but if they're healthy, they are going to be able to do a lot of good for this team. Give Aaron Rodgers some time in the backfield, open up some holes for Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, the new draft pick. This is a team that, as long as, everything on paper clicks the way it's supposed to, and really the only way that it wouldn't, if Aaron Rodgers truly did lose a step this offseason from that Achilles. He hasn't played, maybe he's a little rusty, or the offensive line goes to shambles and people get hurt again. Now, as far as the offensive weapons go, they've fixed the wide receiver core. Outside of Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver core last year was a bunch of dog water. It was awful. Not where you need it to be, not where you want it to be at all. They go out and they get Mike Williams. They go out and they draft Malachi Corley, excuse me. They go out and they try and fix this issue. The defense is still one of, if not the best defenses in the league. You have one of, if not the best corner in the league in Sauce Gardner. Filling out that secondary, it is nasty. Last year, they were ranked number 1 in both secondary, pass rush, and linebackers. As far as that secondary goes, they still have Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. They bring in Chuck Clark from the Ravens. This is a great secondary unit. They did lose some pass rushing, but they went out and they kind of fixed it. They went and traded for Hassan Reddick, who has 50 sacks in the last 4 seasons. The only guy who is even near him in that number is TJ Watt. It's obviously a little, complicated with the whole contract situation that they're looking at getting, but you put him next to Jermaine Johnson, Javon Kinlaw, Quinnen Williams on the inside, that is a nasty front 4. And even the linebackers here, right? You have CJ Mosley, who isn't the same since injuries and leaving the Ravens, but if he can stay healthy, he's a great quarterback to have on the defense. He's super smart, and he's a great defensive quarterback, great captain over there. It's a really, really good defense. It really is. This is a Jets team that has very little holes on paper. Again, on paper is that thing. This is a Jets team that's very fragile. The injury bug can get them. This is a team that's filled with guys that have robust injury histories, including some of their big pickups, or they're just old, which makes them more likely to get those injury bugs. Because of that, it's hard to be 100% optimistic about it, and a lot of this does come down to Aaron Rodgers. How is Aaron Rodgers going to do? I believe in Aaron Rodgers. I believe in this Jets team. I think they're going to be competing for a division, and we'll talk about what record I have. It's a much easier schedule than last year, I believe, for everyone in the AFC East. other than maybe the Bills, who have to go through a gauntlet, and the Dolphins, who have to go through a gauntlet at the very end. We talked about that yesterday. But I'm going to give the Jets an A. They addressed their needs. They weren't greedy about it. They even in the draft, they go and get Olu Fashanu to go out and fix and add more depth to the offensive line. He's not going to be starting right now, but you put him behind Tyron Smith, who is often hurt, Morgan Moses, who's a little older. He can go and step in and take either that left tackle or right tackle spot when you need him to. And I think that was really smart of them to go and get. But anyway, I'm giving them an A for their offseason. I really, really like what they did addressing all of their needs. We're going to take a quick break here, talk about their schedule in our next segment. We're going to go game by game, give them a record prediction. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We just finished talking about the Jets offseason. They did a great job addressing their need of the offensive line. I gave them an A for their offseason. Nothing too flashy, exciting, but they went and fixed a lot of the patches that they had to go and patch up. In this segment, we're going to talk about their schedule. We're going to go over every single game week by week, give them a record prediction. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with the message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Jets schedule prediction. The Jets have an interesting looking schedule, right? This is a Jets team that their toughest game isn't super tough, right? They're going to have to take on the Texans and the Niners. But outside of those two, there aren't many teams that I look on their schedule and I say, hey, this is a game or this is a stretch that I'm scared of for them, right? Not like the Dolphins, whose last 5-6 weeks is the worst in football. There's just a couple of tough games scattered throughout in what otherwise is a relatively easy schedule. Now that has a lot to do with them finishing 7-10 last season, despite having all of this talent, and that can really help them out here. Now, that's not to say that this is the easiest schedule in the NFL. It's definitely something that could bite them. Come back and bite them. They have a week 12 bye. A week 12 bye is not the worst. It's not the greatest, but it's fine, especially when the beginning of the schedule isn't the hardest thing in the world. Although the first game is probably their hardest one of all of them. They start up with 5 primetime games and their first 7 matchups. Their first game of the season is on Monday, just like it was last year. This time on the road in San Francisco, taking on the 49ers. And as much as I'd love to give, Aaron Rodgers his much wanted debut win, I'm giving this to the Niners. The Jets are not quite at the Niners level, although I do think they're very similar. The Titans are the next game on the road as well. This is a game I was honestly going back and forth on. You might look at me like, hey, I'm crazy for doing that, but this is a Titans team that has a lot of talent. We talked about the running back room a little bit earlier on in our show. We haven't talked about it, but Will Levis, I think, is primed for a pretty big season, especially with the wide receivers they've brought in around him. They already had DeAndre Hopkins. They bring in Calvin Ridley. They bring in Tyler Boyd. They still have Treylon Burks, who I am not ready to give up on yet. He's just had a bunch of bad injury luck. But all that being said, I think the Jets take care of business against the Titans, whose offensive line is not up to snuff against a Jets defense. Week 3, home opener against the Patriots. That one isn't too tough to deal with. The Jets take a win here in Week 3, finish up, get off to a hot 2-1 start on the year. Then they go Week 4, host the Broncos. Nice easy game here. The Broncos, I have no idea what's going on at quarterback for them. It's not a great situation, to put it mildly. It might be the worst situation in all of football. The Broncos take a loss here in Week 4 to the Jets. The Jets start off 3-1. Then they head up to Minnesota, take on the Vikings. Sam Darnold probably will be the starter at this point still. I'm giving this game to the Jets. They've got a 4-game win streak right now through 5 weeks. They are 4-1. Week 6, taking on the Bills back at home. This one could go either way. It is a division game. It is at home, so I'm giving this one to the Jets. The Jets' 5-game win streak after dropping the opener to the 49ers. They look good in all these primetime games. Excuse me. They are 5-1 heading into a road battle against the Steelers, and I think this is going to be an interesting game. I don't know who's going to be a quarterback for the Steelers at this point, but I think the defense of the Steelers will be enough that the Jets will not win this game. The Steelers break the streak. The Jets fall to 5-2 on the year. Week 8 is their rematch with the Patriots. It is a division game. Again, I like the direction this Patriots team is headed in. I'm going to give them a win here over the Jets, although that might be a little bit presumptuous of me here. Patriots they win here. The Jets fall to 5-3. Then they get their last really super tough game of the year outside of the Dolphins and outside of the division, and that is the Texans. The Texans, I'm going to give them a loss. It is a home game against the Texans, but CJ Stroud coming in should take care of business against a really good secondary. They lose 3 straight after winning 5 in a row and fall to 5-4. Week 10 against the Cardinals, that is in Arizona. I'm giving the Jets a win here. They get back up to 6-4 on the season before heading back home. Cross-country flight. I think that travel is going to do a little bit to them. They take on the Colts and Anthony Richardson, which is a team that I think might be really good. Kind of inconsistent, but really good at some points, and I think this is going to be one of their good games. The Colts beat the Jets here, and heading into the bye week in Week 12, the Jets are 6-5 on the season, well in the playoff race. At this point, though, as we went over the Dolphins' schedule, they're not super competitive in the division race. The Dolphins at this point, as I have predicted here, is still undefeated, or 10-0 on the season here. They get their bye week. Then they get the Seahawks. Seahawks, as I've said, kind of feel like a litmus test to me for being a good or a bad team. I think the Jets are a good team. Also coming off the bye definitely helps a little bit. I'm giving the Seahawks a loss here. The Jets improve to 7-5 on the year. Then they get the Dolphins. This one is on the road against the Dolphins. I'm giving them a win here. The Dolphins, this is the start of this is the second game in what is the most brutal stretch of games in all of football. The Dolphins take a loss here, and the Jets take a little bit of a step up in that division race, improving to 8-5 on the year. Then they head down to Jacksonville, stay in Florida. I think the Jaguars are going to win here. Trevor Lawrence gets his big contract. This is a Jaguars team that I think is going to be inconsistent, but is going to be good regardless. They take care of business against the Jets, and the Jets fall. Excuse me. They fall to 8-6 on the year. 3 games remaining. They are still in the hunt for this division. If they win out and the Dolphins lose out, they absolutely have a shot. The Dolphins' remaining schedule: 49ers, Browns, and then a game in MetLife against the Jets. Maybe the toughest stretch in football there. The Jets, on the other hand, have the Rams, the Bills, and the Dolphins. It's not an easy schedule. Those are all playoff teams from last year, but it is comparably much easier. I think the Rams are going to take a step back from last year. I still have them making the playoffs, but I do have them taking a step back from last year. The Jets will beat the Rams here in Week 16, improving to 9-6. Then on the road at the Bills. This is a huge game, 2 straight division games to end out the season. I think the Jets take care of business. I'm not a big Bills believer this season. I think they beat the Bills here, much like they did earlier on in the season. The Bills lose. Then we have basically, and it's not quite, an AFC East title game once again between the 11-5 Dolphins and the 10-6 Jets. I have the Jets taking care of business here. Now, tiebreakers, it's hard to predict right now, but that puts both the Dolphins and the Jets dead even at 11-6 on the top of their division. I think I gave the tiebreaker to the Dolphins in this, although it might go to the Jets because of division record. I'm not quite sure where the tiebreakers go, but this is a Jets team that I think, if Aaron Rodgers can be even like 3/4 of what he usually is, can be one of the best teams in football with that vaunted defense that they have. Probably will be the best defense in football this season, even across all 3 levels. Let me know what you think. I have the Jets going 11-6, winning the division, making the playoffs here. Curious to see how far they can go. We'll do a playoff prediction as we get closer to the NFL season later on. So appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me today here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. We'll see you same time, same place tomorrow for everything else going around in the world of sports. You all have a great one, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. It's gonna be a bad day. Time is shit.